Before we get to the topic today, just a brief note on what happened last night and this morning. Uh, it is now April 8th, and we were supposed to have a ceasefire for 2 weeks, and that fell through very quickly. And it fell through because Israel attacked Lebanon in such an incredible force that Iran had to do something. It couldn't just let Lebanon sit out there like that. And you got to wonder, I mean, the real question is this, because Trump has been in a really, really bad situation ever since he walked into Iran. It's very clear at this point. I mean, if Trump is sane at all at this point, you're thinking, these Israelis led me into something that was going to destroy me. This is so dangerous to me that it could actually destroy my administration. I have lost all credibility, not only on the world stage, but at home. These people knew more than they told me, at the very least. Best case scenario, they just didn't tell Trump what was going on. And they led me to believe that we could just walk in and take stuff from Iran and that we could just walk away. And of course, that's not the case. But then, on top of that, you finally strike a deal. You manage to strike a deal. And there's at least a ceasefire for 2 weeks, and things can cool down. Now everybody can walk away. People can sort of come up with ways to cope. And Israel blows the deal up by, I think in one report I saw there were 100 bombs dropped in 100 different places all along the border. These people are telling, I think it was Tyre, which, if I remember right, is an old Crusader city, but Tyre was told to evacuate. If I'm Trump, I mean, you gotta imagine it like this, right? Because for those of us who still are not sure about, Israel is taking over the American government situation. For those of us who are sort of on the fence about that, at this point, I'm not. I'm pretty sure Israel has in fact taken over the American government in too many ways. But for those of us who are, here's the question that you now have to ask yourself. If you're the American president and you manage to get a ceasefire in this quagmire war that was threatening your entire administration's ability to do anything at all for the next 2 years, and was very possibly going to, at the very least, get you impeached. At the very least. People are talking about the 25th Amendment at this point. Imagine you're in that situation, and a client state in the region blows that deal up on purpose, day of. What do you do? Are you going to tell me that you just sit back and take it? If you're really in charge, if you are the American president and we have an American government? And the reality is, of course you wouldn't just sit there. You would be very offended and upset, and you would punish them greatly. The arms would stop, at the very least. At the very least, our missiles would stop going to Israel. The money flow would disappear. Even if you wanted to say, well, we get all that money comes back to the military-industrial complex, so in a way we're paying ourselves and blah, 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 blah. Even if you wanted to make that argument. The real question is, why wouldn't we just maintain control of those arms? Yeah, okay, you are a client state and we're going to protect you because you're under our command. You are under our control. Ready some bases. We are coming in ourselves and we are commandeering every military installation you have. Those are ours now because we paid for them. And as a matter of fact, they've always been ours. We're just stepping in because you're nuts. Something's wrong with you. You don't know how to do anything but lash out and attack and sabotage every peace process that we can make up. Wouldn't you expect something that like sort of looked like that? Just a little bit? And instead, what do? We get nothing. Silence. Thus far, I haven't seen anything from Trump yet. It's just missiles going left and right. Does that sound like the American government is totally uncompromised to you? Or is there something more at play here? Does Israel, for some reason, have something on us that maybe we don't even understand? So it's time to start considering that, okay? It's time to start considering that. If you haven't already, quite a few of us understand what's going on by now. But for those of you who really, 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 really love to play it fast and loose and pretend like you're the adult in the room, let's hurry it up. Let's hurry it along and grow a little bit and start asking the right questions. All right, now I wanted to do something a little different today. There's a point where you can only talk about Iran so much. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on at home, domestically, and some of the really bizarre stuff that we're seeing and the confusion that we have around the genders and how they hate each other and what happened and why that happened. I'll tell you, every time I go to a gas station now, almost every time, I see the same thing. I see a woman in the driver's seat driving around, and I see her boyfriend or husband in the passenger seat, and he isn't just sitting in the passenger seat. He's actually like curled up on the seat, and he's got his phone, and he's curled up and sort of he's sort of turned to the side towards the window, like he's turned away from her, and he's got like the phone propped somehow, and he's watching something like a child. I mean, this guy might be 30 years old, but he looks 9. He looks like he might walk up to you and ask you if you have any games on your phone. That's like the age that we're talking about here. I think I've talked about this before as well, but you know, I every time I go walking around, I don't do a lot of joy walking anymore, where I just sort of go for a stroll. But every time that I have some business somewhere and I got to go walking somewhere along the sidewalk, from a distance coming towards me is always this couple, and I always think it's a mother and son, just the way that they're walking. And as they get closer and closer and closer, I start to realize that these people are a couple. And the reason why I thought that the woman was the guy's mother is because she's always walking ahead of him a little bit. She's holding him by the hand, and she's sort of like dragging him along. He's sort of walking a little bit behind her. And the way that he's moving is not that of a man. At a certain point in your adult life, you start to you fill into your body a little bit in a way that's almost incomprehensible to the eye, that's unseeable. But you end up seeing that a lot, where especially in your like late teens, early 20s, you'll see this person really sort of develop into their body and become one with themselves in a way that children are not. A lot of kids, their body is something that they drag around, and you see it a lot in the way that they're sort of kicking their feet and swinging their arms and sort of tossing their head around, and they're very sort of chaotic with their movements. And that's what I see in a lot of these guys who are in their, it looks like they're in their 20s or in maybe their early 30s. And the woman knows. The woman knows. She's upset about it. She's upset about it, or at least embarrassed. At least embarrassed. The women at the gas station are always mad. I've never looked at them and thought, there goes a happy woman. There goes a woman who's really, really a joyous person who's having a great day. And I always look at these women that I find on the sidewalk dragging their child boyfriend around or child husband. And they always give me the same embarrassed smile. They know, and they give me that smile, and it's always just like, oh boy, okay. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to react to that problem, but they know, and I was in this men's group meeting the other day. That's sort of based out of my church. And the reason why I'm talking about this today is because they were talking about the same problems. They were seeing different stuff, but it really came down to the same problems. But they were really sneering about it, and sort of thumping their chests about how they can't understand how this happened, and it couldn't be me, right? It couldn't be me, bro. And we didn't get into it in much detail, but I've been thinking about it ever since. And there is a point where you have to start asking questions about the systemic reasons for why this is happening, because it's not enough simply to say, like, men these days, huh? Gosh, men these days sure are pussies. Men these days, huh? Is not enough, because the obvious question is, what happened to everybody? If this is something that we are seeing enough, that this is systemic, you have to start asking where it came from. And from my experience, it came from the boomers, and it started early. This is one of those situations where you can absolutely 100% blame the boomers, and now millennials are sort of have been pushing it onto the new generation. I was kind of hoping that it would die with the boomers. I was kind of hoping that what would happen is that the boomers would die, millennials would sort of look around and realize what had been done to them, and that they would sort of correct. They'd probably overcorrect, but they would correct. So that by the time that we got around to, like, I guess it's Gen Alpha now, by the time we got to Gen Alpha, things had sort of, things had been righted, sort of, hopefully. I don't believe that now. Not based on what I'm seeing. And the Zoomers are no better. The Zoomers are screwed. And everybody's mad at each other. I mean, the reality is that everybody hates each other now. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process of how that happened. I don't want to make this long, but in very general terms, I grew up as somebody who had a lot of promise, and a lot of adults talked to me that way. And I can tell you from experience that what I was told was, you stay away from girls. And I'm talking, they started telling me stuff like this by age 9, 10 years old, right? Where I wasn't even, puberty was quite a ways away still for, from the perspective of a child. 3 years is like a really long time. For most of us, that's about where it happens. It was a ways off, but they started getting to me early, and it wasn't just my parents, it was teachers. It was my parents' friends. Everybody was saying this to me. And I know I'm not alone because I have talked to other people about this and they've said the same thing. It's amazing how many people, when you ask them, they don't even realize this happened to them until you really start asking them like specifics about how they were trained like I was. But a lot of us were trained, and I, by the way, this wasn't just men. This is something that they were telling men and women. So the second that they would find a guy or a gal who had any kind of possibility, any kind of like smarts, some kind of talent, they had the it factor, they were beautiful, or they were like attractive, and they were going to turn into someone attractive. You saw it every time. I did, and again, can't stress this enough. I saw it said to other people. This is not just me, and they would tell us, you stay away from the other gender. You stay away from those boys. You stay away from those girls. There's nothing good that comes out of that, and you need to become something, and then you can dabble. And it really, you know what it is? What it actually set up was this premise that sex and having a spouse, having a husband or a wife and a family was something that was like almost a treat. It turns sex not into an obligation or a natural part of life or a part of being an adult or even just a human being, but rather it turned it into this bizarre candy, this strange cake that you were allowed to have once you ate your vegetables. And I don't know if boomers grew up like that and that was something that they were taught, but whatever they were taught, it did not have an effect. The more I learned about the way that these boomers grew up, the more you realize that these boomers were just, they were eating life from both ends. The amount of sex and fun that these people had at a very early age is incredible. And I don't think that that's what happened. I don't think that the boomers had this problem and that they foisted it on to their kids. I think that what happened was that the boomers ate all the cake, realized there was none left for anybody, and turned around and tried to make us make a new cake, if that metaphor makes any sense. That seems to be the pattern that you get with boomers in general, was they realized we went too far, we screwed around, we don't know how life works, everything that we get is accidental or from our parents. We've inherited everything that we do, that we now consider our own, and we don't know how the millennials are supposed to do any of this, and we have nothing to teach them, or we don't want to. That's a big one, because a lot of boomers were jealous of their kids from the get-go. Truly, mine were. Truly jealous. No matter, and it's funny because that doesn't mean that they didn't do things for you as a kid, or that they didn't put you through like program after program after program. Because the thing is, they had two pulls at the same time. On the one hand, they wanted you to be all that you could be and more, because what that would mean was that they were a good parent, and then that would bring them societal brownie points from the community because you were so amazing. So they were sort of forced to push you into greatness, but at the same time, they had to sabotage you in all the right ways because they hated you. And that's really what this comes down to. It's a pattern that I see over and over and over and over again. And this is why you get all of these people who are very high performers at work, if they're allowed to work, if they've been able to get a job and have a career at this point. Um, they certainly were like A students, so to speak, but they've been sabotaged in every other way to the point that they can't be happy. They have nothing that is human. They don't know how to be human, and they miss out on life because they can't afford to have any more L's, if that makes any sense. They've been sabotaged so much that they're just too tired to try anymore, because taking even just one more L would just break them mentally. And this is how you get these people who are just bed rotting nowadays through their 20s, through their 30s, through their 40s, and so on. I mean, that's not going to stop anytime soon. The reality is that many of these people were sabotaged. I would go so far as to say that many of them were abused, actually. If not if not physically, then certainly mentally. And that is how this happened. But to get back to the process, so they start you young, 8, 9 years old, and then what they, you internalize that, right? You go, okay, I understand now. My job is to succeed, and then when I've succeeded, then I can get married. Then I can have sex. Then I can have a girlfriend and, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And that may not be, obviously, that's not something that an 8 or 9 year old understands and thinks about. They're not thinking of it in those terms, but you've internalized the message already. And then you fill in the gaps as you go through puberty, and start learning about things like the birds and the bees. So, fast forward, and now nobody's dating each other in high school when they should be. There are exceptions to that rule. There are people who are like going out on dates. I remember in my high school, there were very few couples. Very few. And there were occasionally, you would get people who were making out, or, there were groups of people who were sort of having sex with each other. But it was localized seriously to that niche group. And it really wasn't, it was not an easy situation to like have a girlfriend and to go out with her and go out on dates. At most, it was sort of a very unofficial thing, and then it wasn't like they were going out on dates with each other alone. You know what I mean? These were people who were like just a part of the group, and they kind of acknowledged that they liked each other, but people weren't like dating in a very serious way. And horrifically, that extended into college for a lot of people. In no small part, this is due to the fact that a lot of people didn't go to university. It's not like you packed up and then like moved to university necessarily. A lot of people just ended up like commuting all the time. And what ended up happening was a lot of people, they just weren't around enough to sort of meet people that way. You go to school in your car, you go to class, and you come home. And so, by about like post college for a lot of us millennials, like dating apps really didn't become a thing until, what was it like? I feel like it was like maybe 2016-ish when like average normal like people were on dating apps. Because by now you're like terrified. You don't know what's going on because you're still not with somebody. And there are too many girls who out there who at this point have had too many sexual trysts, but they're not. None of them turned out to be anything valuable. It was never a boyfriend. It was never a relationship. Those would happen, but they, in my opinion, they weren't real. The more that you hear about them, the more that you start realizing that like, maybe this isn't so. It certainly isn't healthy. Let's call it that. But the thing is that for a lot of these women, they didn't grow up with a healthy concept of of a relationship in the first place. And a lot of that had to do with the stuff that they were being told. There were seminars back then. There were seminars in that were given by boomers telling women about all the things that they needed to be careful of with men. And, it would have been enough, honestly. I understand that you have to, like, protect women's virginity up to a certain point because obviously bad things can happen, especially to the woman, where she's left with a child with some guy who she should not have been with, and blah blah blah, and she learns out the hard way. But now she's got a kid, right? I absolutely make sure everybody understands that. That's not what this was. These were seminars that were given to women about how men were going to try to scam them constantly into love. That they needed to be careful about these, like, catchphrases and stuff like that. And I remember one time I was with my girlfriend, and she went to an all-girls school from, like, very early on, third grade or something like that, all the way through 12th. And I didn't know this, but she had been given these, like, seminars, at least one of them. And I said something one day to her, and she whipped around on me like a vicious animal. And she said, she screams at me at, like, very close proximity. She screams at me with, her eyes are popped. They have gone feral. And she goes, "You better not say blah, blah, blah." And the blah, blah, blah was like this thing that she had been told that guys say to women to get them to drop their panties or something like that. And I literally had no idea what she was talking about. And I calmed her down, and I had to, like, force her to like slowly tell me what happened because she was so embarrassed by it. And I'm trying to get her to, like, explain to me piece by piece, like, what she thought I was gonna do and what triggered that for her. And, like, really nothing had been done at all. I hadn't been overly pushy about anything physical. There was nothing, everything was consensual. There was nothing going on. And I had to comfort her afterwards. Because she had been mentally assaulted by these people running these seminars into believing that, like, at the drop of a hat, this guy that you otherwise are, like, maybe even willing to get naked with and be your most vulnerable with, is going to suddenly turn around on you and start, like, narcissistically manipulating you and hurt you. And of course, that's not what happened in this case. And she didn't even really understand it. But what had happened was she had heard all these stories. They come in these seminars and they teach these women. They tell them all these stories about, like, well, one time this happened to me, and one time this happened to me. And what they're really doing is they're foisting their own bad personal experiences onto these girls who, and often, like, this is long before these girls can really, like, strike out and have their own experiences, right? And this is at a time, and this is true now more than ever. This is at a time when people, how do I put this? We have been trained in America to treat every seminar as a series of data points that we have to file away in our mind. And what's really happening at a seminar like this, where you're talking about something as serious and as fluid and as subjective as love, what you've done is you've created a scenario where you are the authority, and you are now sort of almost possessing these girls. You are sort of demonically positioning yourself into their brain. And inserting, sort of syringing your bad experience into their head, and they are filing it away as fact, as data point, rather than say, a bad experience that you had. And of course, I don't know what these seminars were telling these girls, much other than that, because we didn't get into it too much, but it was very clear that there was not a whole lot of discussion by these people running the seminars about what their own personal responsibility was in those cases. Obviously, right? Um, and so a lot of these girls are sort of being. I've already said it, but the word is possessed. They're almost possessed by things they don't really understand. They don't know that they've been manipulated into being angry at something that did not even happen to them and that they don't know the full story of. That's bad. That's that's a bad way to start anything. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to sort of unravel that kind of problem with a girl that either I am dating, that I am in a relationship with, or that I'm just sort of like on a coffee date with, where I will say something completely irrelevant and inane, talking about nothing, talking about a movie or something like that. And these women will get triggered by something they were told. It was usually like a connotation, right? That it's the sense that, like, I know what you're getting at and I know what you really mean and I know where you're going with this, and it's always taught to them. These things have been taught to them. And that I think is the female version of what the males got from the boomers, right? Females were told from a very early age, and I experienced this and saw this all through elementary school, that they were special, that they were good, and that the boys were bad. That they needed to be careful about the boys. That they needed to be safe from the boys, saved from the boys, as a matter of fact. I can't tell you how many times that was this sort of weird, unfair propaganda that was syringed into us as kids, to the point that, like, boys themselves start to become like very apologetic, weak people. They don't want to be the thing that they're being told they are, because they're good. They're good people. I mean, like, a lot of these kids, they just, they haven't really developed a sense of, like, they haven't, I should say this, they haven't made a choice about whether or not they're a good or a bad person yet. They just want to, like, they want to do right by the adults in the room. So what's happening is these teachers are telling, they're sort of pre-positioning everybody so that boys are these evil, wicked rapist murderers, and that we have to sort of stomp that out of them. And that's why we have to be extra careful around these dirty, dirty boys. And that the girls are by nature these wonderful, beautiful flowers that we have to protect, and because they're very delicate. When you do that to children, and when you set that up as the premise, it is not terribly confusing that those women would grow up and find the most vulnerable and safe men that they can find and date them instead. And you really, like, what happens is you really get two kinds of girls, right? Because the girls in the car that I'm seeing, the girls on the street, those are the girls who have internalized this possession early on, and they have turned around and they've said, okay, in order to make sure that I don't get one of these triggering men, right, I have to now date somebody who is not going to trigger me. And that's going to be somebody who is not sexually aggressive, not particularly sexually interesting, who is somebody that I can lord over, somebody who doesn't make as much money as me, or certainly doesn't have the drive that I do. That puts me in the control. That puts me in charge. And now with me in control, I can sort of control this man and keep him at a distance. And the very moment that this person becomes a problem to me in a way that triggers me because these boomers have already MK Ultra'd my mind, I can jettison them from my life because I'm the one with the bank account. I'm the one with the job. I'm the one with the aggression and the promotions. I don't mind that this guy has no real interest in taking lead or control in our relationship and is perfectly willing to sit in the passenger seat of the car and watch YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Because after all, that's exactly what I want. It's safe. It doesn't trigger me. He doesn't remind me of any of the bad things that I was taught to fear by these boomers. And simultaneously, the guys, we're just freaking tired. We're exhausted. We've been beat up since we were kids and MK Ultra'd into believing that anything that we stood for, anything that we wanted for ourselves was bad. The amount of times that I've seen, and I honestly, like, there are times when I feel this even in myself sometimes, and I'm really not this way naturally, but even I have this inclination. There's this inclination in men these days to sort of try to get sex in a very, very roundabout way, in a very self-serving and lazy way, right? This is how you get these guys who just like, they're never in a relationship, and every single girl that they've ever been with is like a friend with benefits, and they don't want anything anything over anything casual. They want everything to remain very, very light. And the reason is because like we're too tired to be anything else. We're too tired to be somebody who provides, who starts a family, who does what's necessary. We're just exhausted. And this is why I've been talking so much lately about the fact that we're all burnt out. This is something that has happened to us and has been done to us. And I used to think that it was on purpose, and I don't think it is on purpose, or it is by accident these days. I think this may have been done to us on purpose. I have no evidence of that, but there's a point where if it wasn't done on purpose and it was by accident, I feel like what we would get is a change of the guard, right? Is an overcorrection, is a correction of from where we were going to something better, where we have a sit-down conversation and go, what is going on? Let's fix this. And that's not happening. It's not happening amongst our leadership. It's not happening in families. It's not happening from parents. It's not happening from the boomer generation. I can't tell you how many boomers now are terrified. They're having panic attacks, and they're very worried about the fact that their kids just aren't where they're supposed to be in life. And it's because we were always taught not to go for it, right? When you're training, especially guys, this is especially true for men. When you're training men at the age of 8 or 9 years old, don't go for it with these girls. Don't do the thing that comes the most natural for you and approach women and learn how to talk to them and to deal with the other. You need to do your homework, which we will give you. So you don't even have to seek out like your thing day to day. You don't have to seek out your 9 to 5. You don't have to seek out. This is why people panic as much as they do about losing their jobs. Obviously nowadays, especially with the economy as bad as it is, that's also why, because like getting rehired is a fucking nightmare if you can do it at all. But there is a panic that comes, and it comes from a much deeper place than I don't have a job and now I have to get one. Because you have to consider, like, yeah, okay, it's like difficult to get a job and stuff, and obviously you're not getting paid. That's like a big part of the problem too. But that shouldn't be like money should not be as much of a problem as it is were it not for the system that we have been under the boomers. And I'm still talking about dating because the reality is this is one of two reasons in my mind why real estate is as high it is as it is. I can't tell you how many times I go to somebody's house or whatever, and like every single individual now is looking for their own place because nobody's together. You see, everybody's got their own apartment. Well, that's not how it used to be. By the time you were in your early 20s or to mid 20s, you were married. You knew what you wanted. You found a girlfriend. You found a boyfriend. You got married because it was that time. And you moved in together, and like life was cheaper that way. It is cheaper that way. It always is. Having a family, as expensive as it is, at the very least, if you don't have the kids, you can have more space for less money, and you can afford it because there's two of you. But we're not doing that, and we hate each other now. We really despise each other. A lot of that, by the way, comes down to the fact that a lot of us were waiting for the other gender to figure it out. This is especially true for men. I know it's true for me. We are very, very offended by the other gender and what they allowed to have happened to themselves. And in my opinion, I think that men have far more legitimacy in that complaint, far more. Women sucked up that possession juice so easily. They loved it. They really did. Because you have to remember, like, what they were really thinking to themselves is, yeah, you know what? I am special. I am the good gender. I am the right one. I am the naturally perfect person. And these dirty, nasty, disgusting, rapist men, they're the problem. These are the people who are the real problem. They suck. They suck by the inheritance of their genes. They suck because of their gender. Ew. And men kept waiting. Hey, girls, ladies, you're not getting any younger. Please figure this out. We were robbed of a childhood. We were robbed of the natural sexual play that comes between the genders. And that becomes a very necessary and beautiful part of how we respond to each other and how we understand each other and the ways that we learn about each other. We're sort of forced to learn about each other and love each other because we need each other physically. This is natural. This is divine. Something very unnatural has happened to us in the sense that we don't care about that anymore. And we've turned to porn. Men have their porn sites, and women have their books and vibrators, and never the twain shall meet. Look at where that's gotten us. And there's more to this story. There's more to how this happened. But that is sort of what I wanted to discuss. I wanted to at least start the discussion and talk a little bit about something else besides Iran today.